we can edit the intro, and then we'll just
that should be good. I think that's more centered. I mean, the crease of the wall isn't centered behind us. Hopefully, you guys are bothered by that now that I brought it up.
No, we were just talking about how fitness changed my life. Like I think I was 16, 15 when I actually started I started, I did track and cross country. I did that, and then I eventually got into weights. With my buddy. Like him and I would like just compete. Mm-hmm. It was like, okay, like that's why I like going with this guy, because like,
yeah, having someone to compete with, a rival, is very helpful.
Okay, you best believe that when I don't go with him, I'm trying to get actively stronger. So when I do meet up again, I'm burning some fire under his ass for sure.
You think I'm not doing the same?
Oh, I know for sure you are.
Okay, just making sure.
No, I know.
I will say though, I worked so much last week that I only went to the gym twice.
I understand.
I didn't have time because Monday we recorded. Tuesday I worked an 11 and then cooked. Wednesday I hit legs. Thursday I worked a 12. Friday I worked like a 8.5 and then went and worked at the gym. I picked up a shift and then I worked main job Saturday and the gym afterwards because I always work Saturday nights at the gym. And then Sunday I had picked up a shift also, so I worked 8 to 12, and then I went to the gym because I worked. So I worked 8 to 12, and then I just stayed at the gym and worked out, and then edited last week's podcast and posted it this morning.
I love working. I'm not gonna
I do too.
I love it. I just love how, I don't know. Someone once told me I was a workaholic, and I'm like, I'd rather be a workaholic than a fucking crackhead.
I mean, you could have just said an alcoholic, but,
I'm just saying.
That's a little extreme, dog. I'd rather be a workaholic than an alcoholic would have been, like, perfect. But, crackhead, too. I don't want to be a crackhead either. That being said, you could be a crackhead and a workaholic. You could be a workaholic and an alcoholic. I know there are plenty of those.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
There are plenty of those. I'd rather be a workaholic and only a workaholic.
We're a diamond, dude. I'm not gonna lie, we're like 10 out of 10.
Diamonds in the rough.
Oh no, yeah, like
100%.
We work hard. We take care of our bodies,
and we're trying to actively create something, a business.
Exactly. And then we're not out clubbing. We're not out drinking. We're not doing drugs.
Loyal, faithful, just good men.
Like
2 good men. Some young guys that are good men. Some good men. I don't know, dude. I'm real tired. I worked an 11 today too, 11 and a half. So
today was my first day of school.
Oh no!
I had a class with Adam, and it was
nice.
It was fun learning about biology and whatnot in life. Something you don't really think about in depth is the fact that we're really here just to kind of replicate our DNA, just kind of keep. Mm-hmm. That's the only point. If you want to see it in scientific ways, that's the only point of life. And then obviously it kind of makes itself better as it keeps, moving down generations for it to survive. And I never really thought about it that way. It's like, oh, that's interesting.
I'd say that, yeah, if you want to take a purely scientific view, maybe not just to replicate, but to persist and improve.
Oh, absolutely.
And not necessarily persist in a single body, but to continue the species and improve the species at the same time.
Evolution. Yeah, and I feel like the emotions and feelings and all this ideas that we have, I think that's a privilege for sure. Mm-hmm. I mean, because if you think about it, we can become just an organism, just as any animal, and just fuck anything we see. Excuse my language, but kind of reproduce till there's more than the amount of what would you call it? Supply, like supply and demand. Like there's too many supply and not as many demand, and then what would happen? We would all die off. But I think we're pretty smart enough to know that if we keep doing that, we would destroy ourselves. But
absolutely,
it doesn't look like it.
I can't remember who it was that said it. I'm looking it up right now. But there was a philosopher that said something like, if we had nothing to do but busy ourselves with the continuation of the species, but to eat cake and busy ourselves with the continuation of the species, inevitably someone would throw a wrench in the whole operation. Who was it? Okay, it was Dostoevsky, who also said the God is dead thing. The whole God is dead, we have killed him, we'll never find enough water to wash away the blood. Let's see. Let me just, this isn't too long. Let's see. So Dostoevsky said, and indeed, this is the odd thing that is continually happening. There are continually turning up in life moral and rational persons, sages and lovers of humanity, who make it their object to live all their lives as morally and rationally as possible, to be, so to speak, a light to their neighbors, simply in order to show them that it is possible to live morally and rationally in this world. And yet we all know those very people, sooner or later, have been false to themselves, playing some queer trick, often a most unseemly one. Now I ask you, what can be expected of man, since he is a being endowed with strange qualities? Shower upon him every earthly blessing, drown him in a sea of happiness, so that nothing but bubbles of bliss can be seen on the surface. Give him economic prosperity such that he should have nothing else to do but sleep, eat cakes, and busy himself with the continuation of his species. And even then, out of sheer ingratitude, sheer spite, man would play you some nasty trick. He would even risk his cakes and would deliberately desire the most fatal rubbish, the most uneconomically absurdity, simply to introduce into all this positive good sense his fatal fantastic element. It is just his fantastic dreams, his vulgar folly, that he will desire to retain simply in order to prove to himself, as though that were so necessary, that men are still men and not the keys of a piano, which the laws of nature threaten to control so completely that soon one will be able to desire nothing but by the calendar. And that is not all. Even if man really were nothing but a piano key, even if this were proved to him by natural science and mathematics, even then he would not become reasonable, but would purposefully do something perverse out of simple ingratitude, simply to gain his point. And if he does not find means, he will contrive destruction and chaos, will contrive sufferings of all sorts only to gain his point. Basically, does that make any sense?
No, I'm sorry.
It's okay. It was a lot to read, and it was worded. When did he say this? In the 1800s, late 1800s. I want to say Dostoevsky was most prolific during the 1880s.
I'll look him up.
But basically, he died in 1881.
Damn.
At 60 years old. But essentially, all of that was saying that human beings have a desire for conflict, essentially, have a desire for obstacles to overcome. And, if we had nothing to do but live in pure bliss, our own nature would drive us to find some way to mess it all up, just so that there would be something interesting that would happen. And we'd have a challenge to overcome. That's basically what it is. I don't remember why we brought that up. It's been a long day. Regardless, we've been working a lot. Damn. I'm just like brain dead right now after the day, after reading that, after trying to explain that. I don't remember why we brought that up in the first place.
Oh, because of Adam and I took a bio class, and then it kind of.
Oh, yes. Okay.
The whole Darwinism thing.
Yeah, we were getting into like the meaning of life, and propagation of the species. That's what it was. It's to improve, to propagate and to improve, to be better than we were. I mean, you can see that in if you're properly oriented, if you're, sane and you want good things for yourself and for others, whether it's completely selfish or not, typically, if you have kids, you want your children to be and do better than you did.
Oh.
Like if someone didn't want that for themselves or for their kids, you would think they're kind of crazy. Like, what is wrong with you?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like sometimes people do it unwillingly, or they feel like they can't. They put themselves in a mental block into like thinking like I can't give more than what I can already give, and they kind of stop stretching to become better, And then it's like, fuck it. They have like maybe 2 more years till they're 18 and they're on their own type of thing, And that mentality really kills a lot of your own offspring for sure. I feel like, obviously you want to give the best to your kids, but not.
It discourages them.
Yeah. I just feel like I see that a lot nowadays. And then parents will really take what would you call it? The responsibility of actually raising their kids properly. They just kind of let people just fucking raise their kids. And then like something really sad I saw, it was a video about how this mom's like, what, they can eat food, like they can watch an iPad, it's all educational. And then like the dad's like, how come you don't sit down with your own kids and actually actively teach them or read a book with them? And the mom was like, well, they're still going to learn. See, that type of like mentality is just trash.
It's lazy. So I think a lot of people in the modern day for a long time now have not necessarily had kids on accident, which has definitely happened. There's a lot of that, but they have had kids without purpose.
Mm.
They didn't have a purpose behind, I want to have kids so that I can raise them well, teach them what I didn't learn. Like they're just having kids because they're sleeping with their wife or their girlfriend and then they get pregnant. Like a lot of people do it because this is the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And, by all means, propagate the species and whatnot. But at the same time, I don't know. I think a lot of people just don't put much thought behind how they're raising their kids, why they're having kids in the first place, what they want, what type of parent they want to be, what type of child they'd like to raise, and things of that nature. And so as a result, they end up carrying a lot of the same pathologies that they were raised with, a lot of the abuses, the childhood traumas, all of that end up getting put in their kids because they weren't even paying attention to how they were raised to try and do better than how their parents did.
Exactly.
And I'm really saying that from my own perspective of, wanting to have kids because I want to do better than my parents did. I want to give my kids a life that my parents didn't give me a bad life whatsoever. Like I had everything I needed, food, shelter, clothes, all of that. And I went to a good school, all of those things. But of course, like everyone has problems with how they were raised. Everyone has, qualms with their parents over this way or that way that they were spoken to, or how their dreams weren't supported in one way or another. And just like everyone else, I wish that things had been better in my home life because of certain mistakes or poor planning that my parents did or didn't do. And that's kind of the approach that I don't see a lot of people making. And I'm very, very, I've thought about how I want to raise my kids and like even preparation to my wife and I getting pregnant and having kids. Sounds kind of crazy. Basically, I want to, for a year prior to my wife and I, trying to have kids in the first place, get in the best physical shape that we can, like just be really hard charging about physical fitness, eating well, all of those different things, making sure our hormones are in check, making sure we are like the optimal versions of ourselves as close to that as possible, and spend a year building those habits of maintaining that version of ourselves before even trying to have kids. And of course, maintaining that through the pregnancy and then through our child's lives so that our children can see that example in us, and we can actually push our kids to attain that for themselves, coming from a place of doing it rather than just telling them to do it while we're sitting on the couch watching TV. Because there's also that where like a lot of parents are telling their kids to do their homework and get good grades and do this, this, and that, but they're not setting the example for their kids by doing that themselves.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it takes, that's very true. It takes responsibility of both parents. You know, I'm not a parent or a dad yet, but I do kind of sit down and think a lot about how I was raised and like to do what I do want and what I don't want, and the traits that I was built with. Definitely would want the hard discipline, and you know, my mom was always like a hard ass, but I'm so thankful that she was, because it made me pretty tough in today's time. Like I feel like I'm not an easy quitter. Sometimes you gotta just send it, and you gotta do what you need to do in order to get what you need. What you need, you know. There's always gonna be wants, obviously, but you can't have your wants until you get your needs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then that's something that she always kind of like put into my head. Like you can't, like no one's gonna give you anything. No one's gonna come for you. Like no one's. He's like, she knew this. Like she was pretty masculine for a woman. At least I think so. She would always be like, you know, you got the unfortunate luck of being a man, and then your calling is to be a man, and is basically you need to use your balls and fucking take the world, like take on the world. And I was like, I didn't get that till like I was a certain age, and I kind of was on my own. I was like, fuck, that's kind of right.
Yeah.
It took a while, but you know,
same here. It didn't really click until, I mean, I say relatively recently, like a few years ago, really. Like when I started hitting the gym, actually, is when I really figured it out, and I was like, oh, okay, and like internalized it. Like I understood it, you know, intellectually. I guess you could say that it's on you. You got to do it, kind of thing. But like, until you've actually done something worth doing and accomplished something, it's really hard to understand just how much it takes to accomplish something else. You know what I mean? Like before, if you've never lifted, you know, 200 pounds and you're working to achieve 135, your whatever weight you're at, if you're weak and you're not able to lift the bar and a plate, like whether it's a deadlift, a bench press, whatever, and then you get to that goal, then only then do you understand how much more work it's going to take to get to the next plate. And then once you get to that plate, you're like, man, that was tough. That took a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It was hard. And now I know that it's going to take even more work to get to the next plate. And so like, that's kind of the idea that I'm getting at behind what you were saying about not understanding that until you were older, not understanding that until relatively recently, and myself not understanding that until I started hitting the gym and like making better money and making better choices for myself, accomplishing things, experience in work, in all of the different things that I'm trying to attack and the goals that I'm trying to accomplish. Not understanding how much work it takes to get to the next step until I've gotten to the last step.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
mm-hmm.
It's complex. I could probably word it better, but my mind is kind of fried.
It makes sense. It makes perfect sense. I feel like a lot of people don't get to that point. A lot of people skip that point and end up somewhere that they're not supposed to.
They kind of let the wind take them.
Yeah, and then I think there's a certain time and period that we kind of go through that we kind of let loose, and then we kind of like, if you're lucky enough, you kind of slap yourself out of that, and then you're like, oh no, we gotta stop childish shit.
Yeah.
And then I feel like once you hit that point, you don't let go of that point. You kind of like start building your life again in different ways. Like now that you notice that, you know, like life isn't about going out every weekend and drinking. Life isn't about wasting your money on things that don't matter. Like, you're not going to be young. You're not going to be in your 20s your whole life. Like, I feel like a lot of, every time I talk to people and they're their late 60s, 70s. And then they always tell me, don't get old, man. It sucks. I was like, shit. He's like, yeah, you don't even know what's coming for you until you hit your 60s, 50s, 80s. You know, you start feeling in your 50s. Things start to hurt. It won't bother you too much. But once you hit your 60s, oh, God, every day is pain.
Are most of these conversations with these older people, are they more in the hospital setting too?
Mm-hmm.
That's probably part of why they're giving you that advice or telling you that is because they probably didn't make the choices that, like, before we started recording, we were talking about how he was talking about how this dude came in with like a broken toe or a broken finger or something like that because he's, you know, in his 50s and he's riding motocross. I said to him, I was like, well, my stepdad's in his 50s, early 50s. He's riding motocross, or no, he's doing BMX. And I mean, like, part of the reason he's able to do that is because, like myself, he takes really good care of himself. He's like, at my age, he was taking as good care of himself, if not better, than I am right now, because he was playing football for college. He was, you know, eating really well, all of that. And he just kept doing that and still does that. So that's why he's able to race BMX at the age that he is. And that's probably why the dude that was in the hospital for a broken finger was racing, or at least riding motocross at his age. And then we were both saying, like, that's exactly how I want to be when I'm that age. Now those people that are 60, 50, whatever age, telling you, you know, stuff starts to hurt when you get to that age. And I'm saying that I assume that this conversation was happening in the hospital setting because people that are that age and they're in the hospital, if they're not in there for breaking a finger racing motocross, typically it's because they didn't take care of themselves as well as they could have throughout their entire lives. And I mean, like, if you don't change the oil in your car for 10, 20,000 miles, your engine's going to start messing up, and your body's the same way. Your body is a physical thing that you have to take care of. Otherwise, it's going to fall apart.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. But, I mean, one of the guys, at least, yes, he might have had all this fun. Like, you know, the way he explained it is like, yeah, but I love the stories. I love the stories it builds. And then I look back and I can actually tell my grandkids and stuff like that what I did. It's like, yeah, you might have done cool shit. But all that cool shit is like, what's the point if you can't continue doing that with your grandkids? Like, you can't be like, oh, your grandpa used to do this, you know, let's go ahead and do it again, you know? That's exactly what he's explaining. Like, his stepdad can probably go run a mile with him, 2 miles, and not.
Oh, more than that. He's probably in better cardio shape than I am.
His dad is David Goggins, by the way.
He might as well be. No, yeah, he's probably got much better cardio than I do because I don't do cardio very often at all.
Yeah, me neither.
Unfortunately, I really need to. I always say I need to, and I still don't do it.
I try.
But at the same time, I'm more focused on putting on mass, and cardio isn't necessarily, like, a lot of people think that doing cardio is counterproductive for putting on mass. I don't think so. I think it probably helps stimulate your appetite well, and then you want to eat more. But that's besides the point. I just don't do cardio because I'm more focused on weightlifting, and I barely even have time for that. So if I could go to the gym 5 days a week, I'd do cardio, but I can't. So yeah. Anyways, yeah, one of the main reasons I started working out, like, there were a few reasons. One, I wanted to look better and feel better about how I looked, because I was a twink, basically. I was 155. Now I'm 185. I wanted to be stronger for the job that I do now because I'm in construction, and I knew that it would be physically taxing. And if I was weak, that would be a lot harder of a job. So wanted to do that. I want to increase my just overall physical health, which, I mean, that's just a byproduct of working out and taking care of yourself. And I wanted to increase my longevity, which, I mean, retaining my youth through old age. And eventually, when I do have kids, being able to run and be athletic with my kids up until, you know, the age of 60, 70, 80 years old, if I can swing it. But this is a lifestyle that I plan to continue for the rest of my life. And that's how it should be. I mean, you should be able to run a little bit in old age.
Oh yeah. I mean, old age has its own like you're old, so it's understandable. But there should be no reason, unless you have some serious health issues, to not be physically active through your 20s.
Oh,
absolutely. Or young age. You did, or
absolutely.
30s or 40s, you want to keep that up. You want to, if you don't use it, you'll lose it for sure.
Absolutely.
And I feel like it's embarrassing and sad how a lot of people don't actively try to take care of themselves in their 20s, like when they're young, like a little bit. If it's like yoga, if it's stretching,
just take it for granted.
It's like, it sucks, like you have no idea how much potential you have and how much fitness changes your life, your thinking, your whole area, your whole everything. Like if you walk into a room, I'm pretty sure, people are judgmental. People are going to judge you if they don't know you. If they know you, that's a different story. But if they don't know you, I'm sure as hell they're going to pick up like Jack, dude. But that's just me. I don't know. That's what I believe.
So, to bring in another Socrates quote, because last time we quoted Socrates, I don't remember what quote we used. We were talking about leadership. But anyways, another Socrates quote is, "It is a shame for a man to grow old without seeing the beauty and strength of which his body is capable." And that's one, when I first started working out, that I saw that I was just like, yeah, that's true. It is a shame. If you grow old and you're on your deathbed and you've never seen what you're physically capable of because you just never put in the work to get to the greatest level of fitness that you could get to, that sounds awful. I don't know. Maybe I just value physical fitness more than a lot of people do, but it's really necessary. It's really important. And it helps your mental sharpness. It helps obviously your physical capabilities. It makes you more attractive to the opposite sex or to the same sex, if that's what you're into. Mm-hmm. Just generally, it makes you more attractive. It makes you more respectable because people can see if you take care of yourself.
You have discipline.
Yeah, they can see you have discipline. If you're built a certain way, especially as a man, if you're jacked, and you can tell if someone's just on steroids, but even if you're on steroids, it takes a lot of work because you can't just like take steroids and then just blow up like a balloon one day. You still have to put in the work. You still got to eat. You still got to do all these different things. So if people can tell that you take care of yourself, you're automatically respected more. And it's a shame to grow old without getting to the best physical shape that you can get to.
Mm-hmm. I believe so. I think everyone should be required to it should be a law.
It should.
It should be everyone to be a weightlifter. But that's never going to happen. People are
not a weightlifter, but like to be able to do a certain amount of push-ups, maybe not push-ups, but yeah, it should be a law that your body mass can't be over a certain amount without being fined. Maybe that's a little extreme, but it would at least help solve some of the problems. It would, never mind. I'm not going to say that. That's mean.
I feel like if The Rock actually ran for president, that would happen.
It might. But to go back to a point you were making earlier, I had a thought like about, the way people are using their 20s to party and drink and all of that. Like, is it going to pay off more to use your 20s to party, drink, travel, and spend all this money to doing all kinds of stuff that doesn't really bring you anywhere aside from give you certain memories? Or is it going to be more useful to use your 20s to excel as much as possible in business, in your career, in developing yourself into the best possible version of yourself that you could possibly attain physically, mentally, spiritually, economically? If you can improve all four of those aspects of your life through your 20s when you have the most energy to do so, then chances are you're going to be able to maintain that energy because you excelled in those things early on, maintain that energy through your 30s, 40s, and 50s because you put in the time required to make enough money to be able to spend the time later on so that you could, continue that that process, and then you could make the memories in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And you could do it with more people that actually matter to you, because in your 20s, I feel like a lot of people in their 30s and 40s will agree with this, but in your 20s, a lot of the friends that you have in your 20s are not the people that you necessarily want to take with you into your 30s, 40s, and 50s, especially if you're living that kind of life where you're going to clubs and partying and doing all kinds of bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just my perspective. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I want to take the friends that I have with me into my 30s, 40s, and 50s, because I don't make time for friends that just want to party, do drugs, and go to clubs and shit like that.
Well, it's not about even not taking with you. Is that you're just going to outgrow them, and they're not going to be able to keep up to what you truly want to become.
Absolutely.
It's like they're going to find boring that you're going to want to read a book or just sit.
Yeah.
Chill. Maybe have a glass of whiskey with a cigar. Just kind of talk about, business ideas, or like, I don't know, some like idea that you guys want to do.
Yeah, seriously.
They're gonna be like, oh, dude, let's go hit the club or something. Like, nah.
Yeah, the club is just.
Bro,
I've never been one to go to the club, but that's also partly because like I grew up with various influences in my life. I had a side of my family that was like really straight edge, straight and narrow, just doing what they had to do. That was the side of the family that I was more raised with. That I also had the side of the family that was a lot of fun, and I love them to death, because like just a lot of positive emotions, but there's a lot of roller coasters, up and downs of negative emotions, from falling on hard times because they didn't do what they should have early on, because they were spending too much time partying, doing drugs, and doing things that they probably shouldn't have done, going to clubs, all that kind of stuff, because they had money at the time. And then, so because they had the money, they were doing the experiences, and then not, planning for the possibility that they might not have money. And then they met a point where they didn't have money like they did. And now they're just on hard times all the time.
Yeah, I don't want to end up like that.
Yeah. And part of it is directly because they spent all their time partying and going to clubs and going to bars and just focusing on having fun, as opposed to focusing on building a life for themselves and their kids that they could be proud of on their deathbeds. And I love them to death still. They're not doing terribly, but they're not doing as well as they could be doing or could have been doing if they had played it smart, as opposed to having fun.
Yeah, we're not here to tell you what to do, but we're just trying to give you some advice on what to do.
It's some young guys sharing wisdom. That's basically what this podcast is all about.
We're not shaming anyone. If that's what you want to do, go for it.
Absolutely.
Just don't blame anyone on the way there.
Like, you can't blame anyone but yourself for your own life choices. Yeah. For the way you're, especially after you turn 18, move out of your parents' house, you can't really put any blame on anyone but yourself. I mean, you can put the blame on them, but you'll be wrong for doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, sometimes you're dealt with a bad hand, and you just got to work with what you got.
I mean, there are people dealt terrible hands.
Oh, yeah.
Like Yeonmi Park. Have you heard her story?
Successful?
She's successful now.
Yeah.
She was born in North Korea, escaped, sold herself and her mother into slavery in China to get out of North Korea, and then eventually escaped to the States. And she's been on Jordan Peterson's podcast. I think she was on Jordan Peterson's, but she was definitely on Joe Rogan's podcast. And telling her life story. She's done very well. But I mean, like, she was born in North Korea. And some very, very terrible circumstances. If you listen to her podcast, her talking about her life story, crazy, terrible experiences that none of us here in the States can really, really imagine, because it's just poverty and difficult circumstances that are really hard to believe.
I just find it crazy. I find it insane how, I don't know, I just feel like we take life for granted sometimes, and then we
definitely do
the little things that we have. I feel like
absolutely,
especially here in America.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I think we take it for granted. All these other people in foreign countries are going through stuff that we don't even see, because I mean, America doesn't care to even put it on television until it's like blasted or something, or someone whistle blows it or something.
Yeah,
but it's quite sad.
Yeah, America's full of very ungrateful people.
Yeah,
that take their lives for granted.
I feel like that's a kiddish, what do you call it? Like a kiddish.
Well, we have a lot of perpetual children here.
No. Like I feel like it's a kiddish attitude to be like
childish, immature,
like immature, and I feel like there's a certain age where you stop feeling or feeling entitled or like taking things for granted and be like, oh my god, like I'm going through this. It's like which is not a big deal.
Yeah,
but obviously you grow up to the point where you're like, man, this is really shitty, but I gotta get through this.
Yeah, it's the thing with that is that especially in first world countries like America, like Europe, like all kinds of different places, depending on where in Europe, but especially in first world countries where natural selection does not really matter to you. Like it doesn't apply to you as much, where dumb people and lazy people and people that for all intents and purposes would not have survived if it was 200 years ago, 300 years ago, whatever the case may be. They wouldn't have survived in the woods, in the wilderness. Those types of people are protected by society. And so you end up with a lot more people that are ungrateful, childish, entitled. They think that everything should be given to them without having to work very hard. And, that's just not reality.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you going to do? Can't really do all that much other than do the best you can for yourself. I don't think we should prey on those people. I don't think we should, take advantage of those people. We should try and help those people see reality. But beyond that, I don't know what you can do with those people.
Yeah, it's a virus.
It is. It is. It really is. But I think our incoherent ramblings should probably come to an end at some point, and that point might be now. Because
I think so. We should give this man a break.
I mean, yeah, my mind is completely fried.
Let's get you home.
Yeah, I'm all over the place. And we'll be more prepared next time because this was kind of impromptu. But I think we covered some good ground. Raise your kids well, take care of yourself, prepare for the future. Plan for the future, plan how you want to raise your kids, plan how you want to take care of yourself. Like, don't think that your life is going to end in 5 years so you can just say, screw it. Like, plan for the best, prepare for the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. That's what I think is a good way to do things. Like, I'm planning to build businesses and eventually have kids and a wife and a white picket fence and all that. And I really, really hope that I'm able to achieve all those things. And I'm taking steps to make that the reality that I have in 20 years. But at the same time, I understand that we might end up in World War III. It might be the end times right now. It might be aliens going to come and kill us all in hellfire because God, promised he wouldn't flood the earth again. So maybe it's going to be fire this time. But that could happen tomorrow. And I'm prepared for that if necessary. If that's what comes our way, I'm prepared for that. But at the same time, I really hope that's not what happens. And I'm also taking steps in the event that doesn't happen. If things keep going business as usual, those are the steps I'm taking. But I'm also prepared for the worst possible case scenario. And that's how I think most people should live their lives.
Absolutely.
It's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
It definitely helps you avoid being caught with your pants down.
You don't want that.
No.
But yeah, thanks guys for joining us again.
Absolutely.
Honestly, appreciate you guys for listening. It was a weird intro, but
it was no intro.
We just jumped right in there.
Just jumped right in.
Cold plunge.
I'm Lee Mack.
I'm Carlos.
And this is Some Young Guys, just trying to solve the world's problems in a podcast.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Peace.